Hey, everybody out there. With us once again is Mark Collinsworth of Vere Global Wealth Management to talk about today's Consumer Price Index report. Our president says happy days are coming again and everything is looking rosy. Mark, what do you think?
Kind of, you're putting a lot of stock in. The number only came in what, 3/10 lower than expectations. So instead of inflation running at what, 7.4, it came in at what, 7.3 or a
7.1,
7.1,
7.1.
7.1.
Yeah.
Is 30 bips really that big of a thing? Inflation is still running at 7%. Mortgages on homes are running over 6%. People can't afford to buy stuff. Um, and the Fed's not going to stop raising interest rates. When Jeremy Powell gave his last speech, he said they cannot make the policy mistake they made in the 70s. In the 70s, inflation started coming down and they stopped raising interest rates. I don't see them making that same mistake here.
When is the next interest rate to be announced?
That is actually going to be tomorrow at 1:15 Central Time, and the expectation is 50 basis points.
Well, that's lower than the 75 basis points, which has been for several times recently.
Correct. And what's kind of funny about that is, years ago, Wall Street was always terrified of 50 basis points. Now the Fed's gone to 75 basis points. And what's amazing is everyone's excited they're going to do 50 basis points tomorrow, which I just don't understand that when that used to be a panic number in the old days.
But again, could it be argued that it is a sign of improvement now? They're lowering it from 75 to 50.
Well, yes, but they're still going to raise rates because the Fed wants a 2% inflation rate. Think about it. They've taken interest rates from 0.25 to 4% in a year, and you've only moved the inflation rate down 1%. If you want to get inflation down to 2% at this rate, you're going to have to get the Fed funds rate up to 7%.
Well, the president who's crowing about this, taking several victory laps, says the end of next year, we should see an improvement. Do you think that's what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, because next year you're going to have a recession, and recessions always bring down the CPI number.
So we're in for some tough sweating before it starts improving at the end of next year.
But this is also a thing he's not telling you. The reason why the inflation rate's coming down is because things have now gotten so expensive, consumers can't buy them, so they're not buying it, and that's why the numbers are coming down because the retail companies and the producers are having to cut prices because no one's buying them because they're too expensive. So is that a good thing? I don't think so.
And you say that's part of the strategy, plus layoffs, correct?
Well, yeah, we have a lot of layoffs announced in tech. When companies start cutting back because things are too expensive, technology spending is the first place to go. You don't want to fire people to last because it's just too hard to train them and everything. But technology is the first place. And we're not talking about a few hundred jobs. We're talking thousands and thousands of jobs. Microsoft, Facebook, the list goes on and on about all these massive job cuts.
But at the same time, another, I think, distortion of President Biden today in his speech was that for the first time in a long time, wages have gone up more than inflation has. Now, that's really misleading. Wages are up 0.5%, 0.5%. Inflation is still 7.1%. So although wages increase a little bit, it's still far below the hit that the worker is taking with inflation, correct?
That is correct. But another part they're also not telling you is wage growth is very bad because the more wages grow, the harder that inflation digs in. So that 0.5% increase in wages, that could lead to a permanent increase of a 0.5% to 1% in the inflation rate that you just absolutely won't be able to get rid of.
Something else, what is fixable now on a permanent basis? For instance, he also talks about gas prices being lowered. Now, that's largely the result of him draining the strategic oil reserve, correct? And how long could that continue?
You're correct. That's 2 points. He's just healed the strategic oil reserves. But let's not forget, gas prices always come down at this time of the year because people just don't travel anymore. Summer vacation is peak travel. People travel less. Now, you might see a little bit of spike as we get into the holiday season with people traveling for Christmas and stuff. But as of right now, no, he's dead wrong.
So, in other words, summing it up now, before we move on to our next topic, which is the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried, the guru of cryptocurrency, the Warren Buffett, the boy genius. Before we get to that, Um, so this is largely sleight of hand then with Biden, saying that happier days are ahead. That we're over the hump now, moving towards significantly better days. It's pretty much just manipulation of statistics.
Well, it is. I kind of compare it to this, Larry. It's kind of like if someone comes into your office every morning and hits you in the head 10 times with a baseball bat, and then the next day they decide to only hit you 5 times. Are you really that better off?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next topic: the arrest of a Sam Bankman-Fried. Interestingly enough, just before he was about to testify before Congress. Now, isn't that interesting? That timing.
Yes. That's
Damage
very
control?
interesting.
Was his damage control before he spilled too much in front of Congress?
Oh, I think so. I saw an estimate this morning or yesterday that there's probably somewhere around $70 million in donations or campaign contributions that he's made to certain political parties. Um,
Well, actually, he was the second largest contributor to Biden's campaign, short of George Soros, who was the first largest contributor.
well, correct. That's also another funny thing. If you look at when things go wrong in companies, they normally go wrong under a Democrat regime. Look at Enron. All the problems you saw with Enron and Tyco, all those problems developed under the Clinton administration. You look at problems like 2008. You can trace the 2008 debacle all the way back to the Glass-Steagall Act being repealed, which was repealed under Bill Clinton as well.
Now, there's some speculation that, well, maybe they arrested him because he was a flight risk. But I would assume they could have kept an eye on him and kept him from leaving the country, short of
Oh yeah.
arresting him. So, in other
When the,
words, damage control before you could say too much, implicating the politicians and the regulators that he was making donations to. The regulators and the politicians that let this go wide open, and they had to know that the guy was, there was something fishy about the entire operation. So, I mean, was this most likely a move to shut him up before he could incriminate others even more?
oh yeah, I absolutely think that.
So how's it going to turn out? Is he going to go to jail, or is there going to be some kind of a deal? Is he going to be, then if it's out of the news 6 months or so, something else happens where he's scot free? What do you predict here?
He'll have to do some kind of jail time, so at least looks like the government can say, "Hey, we're doing this," and then the process, the government's also going to pass some new rules and regulations saying, "Hey, we're trying to clean up the crypto industry." And from my experience, when people that have never worked in the industry, they write, politicians write laws on healthcare, or they never worked in the healthcare industry. They write laws on banking, but never worked in banking. They basically have a degree in law, and they've done stuff like civil community organizers or something. And pass some laws, but they won't do any good. Like I always tell people, locks on a door only keep an honest man honest. They can't stop a professional.
How many others could be implicated in this and actually be charged criminally?
Oh, there's probably a lot of people that are probably should be arrested, but as the game goes, those people will never be arrested.
What I also find interesting now, according to reports anyway, his parents, they're both Stanford College law professors. And apparently his mother was in charge to some extent of steering donations to the Democrats and other politicians. And the father was actually an employee. So here are two parents who know the law, they're law professors, and they were in on the operation. Now, isn't that interesting?
That is, I mean, that's just I guess free legal advice on how to commit a crime.
Unbelievable. I mean, again, he was with all the big wigs. There's pictures of him with, in his hippie outfit with President Clinton and the Prime Minister of England, and all the people rubbing elbows with him, and nobody was suspicious. They just wanted to grab those contributions that he was making. So
Oh yeah.
I'm sure, Clinton is not going to be charged with anything, but I mean, doesn't this show how easily these politicians are ready to take any kind of money they can and no questions asked, questions that should be asked, questions that are obviously begging to be asked?
I totally agree. It's politics is just nothing but corruption these days. I think what there was someone that used the quote one time: if the average person on the street really knew how the government and politics worked, there would be an instant coup the very same second.
Yeah. And part of the excuse they're making is, well, there is a lack of regulation. So therefore, nobody could really put the brakes on this. But I mean, certainly these people knew that there was something fishy about this, and there was a high probability that it was a crooked operation. And yet all these politicians with all their experience, all these agencies, nobody said a word about this until it all came crashing down, and then they had to act.
Well, and that's the thing. How can you ignore the crypto industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and you can just sit there and just ignore it until something blows up, and then all of a sudden say, "Oh, we need regulations on it." Well,
Yeah.
God bless, you've been talking about taxing the stuff for the past 2 years. I mean, what more does it take? I mean, I guess the long story short, the politicians got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and now it's time to make it look like the cookie jar has a lock on it.
Yeah, also got a kick out of the Bahamas, arresting him first, and then they're going to let him go to be taken to the U.S. But I mean, they set up the nation there where this could occur, and now they're acting as a policeman because I guess they're being forced to politically. But I mean, that's a laugh in itself. I mean, that whole setup there is for this kind of activity to take place out of
Oh,
regulations, out of all these laws stateside, and now suddenly they're outraged and they're arresting them.
what's funny about that is I know quite a bit about offshore banking and stuff. Um, he really didn't have an office there. Basically, had like a PO box. You can set stuff up. He's probably never actually even gone to the Bahamas other than taking a vacation. And it just amazes me that no one knows this. If you ever watched the movie The Laundromat, they're saying, if you think of a bathroom as a country and a window as you're looking into it, you could be looking at a window but see an entirely different bathroom on another part of the planet.
Well, I mean, he was living there, according to reports, and there were lavish real estate purchases for himself and his friends and his parents. So, I mean, he was ensconced in the Bahamas, and
Yeah, I seriously doubt there was an actual office or business there. You can open up an offshore office with nothing but a PO box down there.
obviously he was living there, but there didn't have to really be an actual office
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
And so it goes. So, all right. So when all of this blows over, and they give them some jail time or whatever they work out, in a year or so, is there going to be reforms now and strict controls of the cryptocurrency world, or is it going to be pretty much business as usual?
Well, they'll just pass some rules that will hurt the average person on the street, but the big guys that play it, like your Goldman Sachs and Fidelities and stuff, the laws will be written because what's going to happen is a Goldman Sachs or something is going to make a donation to the politicians writing the laws. Politicians are going to ask Goldman Sachs, "Hey, what laws do you think we should have in place?" And then Goldman Sachs gets to write those. Perfect example: Obamacare. They hire the healthcare companies that's going to end up having to give away free healthcare, which is going to be a cost to them, and they write the laws and regulations. Why do you think healthcare stocks? You're giving away something free. Why do you think healthcare stocks were the best performing stocks during the Obamacare issue?
And so it goes on and on. So, Mark Collinsworth of Vere Global Wealth Financial Management, thanks again for your insight on what is really going on beyond the headlines that seem to sanitize everything that they report on. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.